The opening to this book is fucking insane. Here, let me give you a little insight into how weird this book is. On Saturday, our cat Dusty was giving the whole family too many wrong feelings. She weed on the upholstery again. It's nice to have pets to stroke, and we do love Dusty, but she's been too naughty recently. She gets in the way. Later, a man over the road tripped over her and broke his leg. That was inconvenient, and the man needed a health patch. That was when I took a long look at Dusty and decided she was very inefficient. Animals run about for no reason, and they must feel all sorts of odd sensations just like people used to. I thought it would be a good idea to improve Dusty, as she would be happier and would understand not to be naughty. So I went to my room and got out my pen and paper. I had lots of ideas about improvements and I wrote them all down. Then I called Dusty into my room and set to work, using Mother's cutters and things from her work kit. First, I took off her tail, which I considered to be a bit pointless in its present form, so I stretched it and made it scaly. Then I opened Dusty up and moved her organs about to make them more logical. Then I took her head off, pulled her brain out and studied it. It's very primitive, not really what you'd call a brain at all. I got out one of Mother's gene sprays and dialed it to make Dusty more ferocious at catching mice and better at breeding. I made it so she would never wee again. Then I put all her bits back together and took her downstairs to show to my parents. Unfortunately, the improved Dusty gave my parents wrong feelings. They tried to catch her, but she sped out the door and I don't think she'll ever come back. All the mice are dead now. There was no need for mice, and eventually all cats will be like Dusty because of my cleverness. I like improving things. So that was my weekend. So that intro is about this character called Chantal, who is from the future of Earth, basically, at a time where they've kind of forgotten their history. They don't remember anything about their history. They've regressed. I can't exactly remember why, but basically now they use these patches and little machines that Chantal creates in the future to get rid of any wrong feelings. They just, if they get anxiety, if they get concerned, if they get sad or fear, they just press a button and it's all back to normal. And that's kind of half of this book is about. But that introduction definitely keeps you interested, but I would say that the book never really kind of feels like it gets up to that point. I mean, that part of the book is never mentioned again. The character of Chantal is in the book, but her childhood, her life is never really mentioned. She's just you get that basically she's a dick. Only Human was released alongside The Deviant Strain and The Stealers of Dreams on the 8th of September 2005 in hardback, and was subsequently released as part of the 50th anniversary collection. They had one book of each Doctor, you can fit them all up. They've got these nice little spines, and so Only Human was the choice for the 9th Doctor. The key takeaway that I got from this, especially towards the beginning of the book, is how different Jack is characterized compared to the Deviant Strain. If you remember in my previous video, I didn't feel like Jack was very accurately portrayed compared to his on-screen appearance, whereas here, Jack is almost concerningly accurate to his character in the show. I love to see the three of them kind of converse and work together, and they all shine in their own capacities. Like at some point the boys are kind of tinkering with the machine trying to find a caveman in modern day Bromley, whereas Rose just goes to the nail salon and gets the information that they need really quickly. I mean, not as quick as she likes, but really quickly, and all it needed was some local intelligence, and she kind of managed to do that way better than the Doctor and Jack ever would have thought. And so that was kind of nice, and you do get little bits like that throughout the book. One of the halves basically of this book is to do with a Neanderthal that has been thrust into modern day Bromley, and is unable to go back due to the way that the Neanderthal has been accidentally thrust into the future. They are unable to time travel back. So half, or I guess a third of this book is Jack and the Neanderthal in modern day Bromley. But I'll get back to that in a second, because basically that sets up the kind of reason for the Doctor and Rose to head back into the past to find out where this Neanderthal came from. Also early on, like as soon as Rose tells them where the Neanderthal is, which is at the hospital, The Doctor states that he doesn't like to use buses, which is very contradictory because he then goes to use the TARDIS to just hop on over to the hospital, which we've seen multiple times. Is kind of one of the reasons why the TARDIS they don't just use that to get everywhere. The Doctor doesn't like to bring the TARDIS everywhere into battle, basically, like he says in the Bells of St. John, but also in was it The Monsters Inside? No, Winner Takes All. The Doctor and Rose use the bus mainly to just get to and from the town centre, and it's quite fun. Like, it's nice to see that kind of human feel. But no, they just hop into the TARDIS and get to the hospital. Now, at the hospital, you have a very, I suppose, I mean, there's an elephant in the room with this book, but I'll get to that in just one second. But there's this very Jack moment, I suppose. At one point, when they get to the hospital, Rose and the Doctor need him to create a distraction. So what does he do? He strips off naked and runs through the hospital. Whether this was something that the writer of this book was aware of John Barrowman doing on set, God knows, but it's really uncomfortably accurate to the character, I suppose, not necessarily even Jack, but of John Barrowman. So it was quite difficult to read. It wasn't really, I wasn't reading it as like, oh, this is a really funny thing to do. I'm like, no, why is this happening? I don't really want to touch on it too much, but in short, the author is a massive transphobe, so I don't really want to talk about it too much. Don't want to give him any more light than he deserves, which is none. That being said, it's crazy seeing the parallels in this book with humans and Neanderthals, like the casual racism in this book, and the fact that the humans use the them as a pronoun in a derogatory way is really uncomfortable. The beginning of this book as well, it also felt like Jack was more of an afterthought, which makes sense. Obviously, they probably, I'm not sure exactly on the time frame, but I believe they were writing this during Series 1 or potentially before Series 1, and I think it was during, so they wouldn't have gotten to see Jack particularly too much. So Jack could have not been in this book. In fact, I'll talk about it now, that there's basically most of the book is set in the past with the Doctor and Rose at this institute that are studying Neanderthals and animals in the past. And then Jack, you get little journals made by Jack and the Neanderthal Daz that he is with, and in the few weeks that they have waiting for the Doctor and Rose to come back, as Jack helps the Neanderthal Daz integrate into human society. And they're nice to read, but they are completely useless. Like, they don't need to be in there. In fact, Jack, again, like, as much as he's characterized decently well at the beginning of the book, he didn't need to be there at all. He didn't make any lasting impact in the book. So that's why I'm assuming that he's more of an afterthought. He was kind of maybe added after the fact. So despite Jack being fairly well represented, he's left with like the C or D plot of the book, because even within the Doctor and Rose going back in time to the Neanderthal era, there are so many different plots, and the Doctor and Rose get split apart and stuff like that. Basically, what they find when they go back in time is Chantal's institute that has gone back to investigate humans and stuff like that in the guise of investigating Neanderthals and all that kind of stuff. But really, Chantal's there to breed what she calls hybractors to kind of replace humanity. She's gone back in time, and she thinks that humans and cats as well, obviously, are rubbish, and so she's now mutated humans and breeded massive human monsters to overthrow everything on Earth and create a perfect society, I suppose. The plot was really interesting for the most part, essentially theorizing what humans could be like with no wrong feelings, and the Doctor and Rose have some really cool moments. Rose specifically with the Neanderthals and the humans, even getting married to old humans from back in that era, not multiple, just the one, but that would be okay if she did. And the big bad Chantal, she does some really awful experiments, like put in really disgusting detail here, but in a fascinating way that you do really like to kind of read. At one point, she is literally holding the Doctor's heart in her hand in front of his face, and as well, she at some point decapitates Rose, but she still has control of her body. Just goes to show how insanely intelligent, basically, that she is in being able to pull off these kind of experiments. But that's kind of where the book ends. You know, you have these experiments, you have a look at humans and Neanderthals back in hunter-gathering days, you have Jack in the future for no reason whatsoever, and it's not necessarily like I definitely felt much more interested to begin with, and I still wanted to read this book despite, you know, the controversies. I got it secondhand, so you won't have to worry about that, but it's not necessarily like mind-blowing, but again, it's still written fairly well. I don't feel like with some of, I mean, the novelizations are a key one, especially the New Who ones that I've been talking a lot about recently, where they kind of just feel like a kid's book. This definitely is not a kid's book. I would not give this to a kid to read, because I mean, they might find Jack and Daz a bit funny, but as soon as they pop back in time and see all the stuff to do with the Neanderthals and stuff like, and Chantal and the Institute and the wrong feelings, and it's kind of would give the wrong impression. Because I mean, for the most part, yes, they fix all of these employees that have these machines to do that, to give them, take away their wrong feelings, but there isn't really a lot of necessarily moments where they're like, this is really bad, you should not be doing this, because it's actually seen as like boosting productivity, basically. So I wouldn't recommend anyone give this to their kid to read, but it was still quite an interesting book to read. So with that, I will be giving Only Human a 7 out of 10. So thankfully, that's all over with. I can hit up the final book in the Ninth Doctor new series adventures, that being The Stealers of Dreams by Steve Lyons.